Whoa, that's close up, wasn't it? Hey everybody, thanks for joining me here. You're at home with Melissa and I'm winded. It's springtime here in western Pennsylvania, and it's finally regular springtime instead of the early spring, which is nice. Early springtime here basically is, well, you get a day of snow, and then a day where the sun comes out and you go, oh, that's beautiful, what is that? And then the next day it rains and then sleets and hails and snows and wind and crazy. The weather doesn't know what it wants to do in the early spring, but then the proper springtime comes on, which is great. As you can see, I've got the dirty fingers. Filthy. Look at that. That's dirt. Finally. What we're looking at now is, today is the first day that I think you can really say spring has hit, because we don't have any snow in the forecast. Now the temperatures at night are still getting cold, and in the daytime it's supposedly, according to the Weather Channel, it is right now, right here, 56 degrees Fahrenheit, which is for most people like light jacket weather, I think. According to my thermometer that's in the sun, as am I, it's actually close to 80 degrees Fahrenheit, and that is hot. That's really hot. In fact, that's where you're getting a little bit too warm for some tropical fish. You know, it's warm. And I'm out here today doing some things you can do in the early spring, and some things that you should be doing once spring actually hits. Now, if you're in an area where you're still getting some snowfall, and I'm not saying we won't, I'm thirsty, but I've been working. I haven't been running around or doing heavy lifting. I've been planting seeds. Basically, my friend Pete, he does a lot of the heavy work for me now that I can't, so that's really nice. I'm glad that I have him. But I am out there planting, and I got today planted a lot of things that you can plant in the early spring, and that's really what I want to focus on in this video, is to kind of go over some of the things that if you live in a colder area and you get snowfall and then you have the warmer seasons and things like that, and you're hitting that part of the year where it's still snowing on occasion, but you have a little bit warmer days too, and you're getting that mixed bag of weather, but the ground's not warm yet, because I mean, you can work it, but it's not warm, meaning it's not frozen. You can move it, you can dig in it, but it's actually still cold. A lot of people at that point in the year, they just still continue to hibernate as if it were wintertime, and by then their cabin fever's taking over, and they're really frustrated with having been locked indoors for so long, and they're trying to get out, and they're wanting to get out, but they really don't think there's anything they can do outside. And that's not quite true. I mean, there are a lot of things that you can do. For example, if you have, and I don't have them to show you anyway, so I'm just going to sit here and talk to you, but if you have the ornamental grasses, most people that live in these snowy areas, I think, tend to leave those grasses standing throughout the winter because they look so nice with the snow on them and things. And the seeds in those little tassels on top can help feed some of the birds through the winter. But when you want to get that taken care of and ready for the new season to start before it actually does start, so it can get a nice healthy go of things early on. And so right now for you would be perfectly the right time to take care of your ornamental grasses. Now there are basically two kinds. The one kind of ornamental grass, if you look at them, they completely die off in the winter. They turn completely brown through and through. Those you cut down really, really close to the ground, okay? That gives the new growth the sunlight, space, air that it needs in order to grow up. So you can do that right now, and then what you do is you take and you get rid of the brown dead stuff. And you want to make sure probably not to throw those tassels into your compost, because they could have seeds in them still, and compost gets hot enough, and that's a chemical reaction. It's not heat from the sun, so you can compost in the winter. A lot of people, I compost in the winter, and a lot of people give me grief and say, it's too cold, that's not going to work. Well, yeah, it does. But anyway, because it's a chemical thing. It's different bacteria break things down. And things will break down in the winter too. I mean, so, you don't want to keep it in frozen solid in ice, but a pile of stuff will decompose more slowly, but it'll decompose in the winter. So anyway, usually most compost piles don't get hot enough to kill off seeds. They'll break down your leaves and even small twigs and things like this really easily, and stems and things like that, but seeds not so much. And so what might happen is if you throw those tassels from the tops of your grasses into your compost, when you go to use it, it looks like it's all broken down and it's great and you're going to throw it in the garden. Well, you could have those grasses then grow up in your garden because the compost didn't actually kill the seeds off. So you're probably going to want to dispose by burning them or throwing them away, something else with those tassels, just to be on the safe side. The grasses you can throw in your compost pile, do whatever you want, or put them in the bottoms of your raised beds to break down before you get started really planting some of your other things in there. Things like that. So you can do that with the grasses that completely die off and turn completely brown. Now, other ornamental grasses, I'm like so excited, I'm stuttering today, but other ornamental grasses, if you look at them, you'll see that they're mostly brown, yes, but they don't go completely brown. There's a lot of green in there as well. Those are considered to be evergreen grasses. And the way you deal with those is you just splay out your fingers and rake through them with your fingers. That will remove the dead, dry stuff while leaving the green stuff alone. You don't cut it down. You just do that and pull out the dead stuff. You could go into each patchier ornamental grass that has some green growing in it and one by one pick off every grass that's completely brown while leaving the ones that are green. But that's not really the recommended method. It would take you forever. Just do this. Just rake through it like as if you're raking through your hair, and you pull out the dead stuff. And the disposal is the same as it is for the grasses that completely die off. Another thing that you can be doing when you're still getting some snow or it's still too cold, you don't think you can do anything else, is, of course, say you have mint beds, which I do have. If you didn't clear out the dead mint at the end of the season last season, like with your grasses, you want to go ahead and take out all the dead stuff and dispose of it so that your mint can have the air and the sunlight that it needs in order to grow during this early part of the year. And it comes off really easily. You just go like this and pull it. It snaps off. And so it's a really easy thing to take care of. Other things you might want to do is, once things are starting to grow up but they're not yet high, go through and see if you have any large, say, thistle, or if you don't like dandelion, you have dandelions growing up, or any of those big, heavy things that you might consider to be weeds. You want rid of those. Now's the time before they get out of control. Dig them out. Dig as much of that root out as you can. And that taproot can go down several feet. So, do your best. This is a good time to do it if you can get into that soil. If your soil is thawed. Might be, might not be. The best way to do it is just to check. Just see if you can get a shovel down in there. If you can't, well, then you might have to wait a little bit longer. Now, there are also, at this time of year, when you're still getting some cold snaps, you might get some more snow, what have you. There are some things that you can plant. As long as your ground isn't frozen, there are things that you can plant. And nowadays, in your local stores, they usually stock things for sale at about the time you can use them. But you can't really take that as rote. Not every single store does it. So on the back of, if you're buying seed packets or whatever, you can see it will say plant as soon as the ground can be worked? Well, that's self-explanatory. If your ground's not frozen, if you can turn it over, if you can work it, then you can plant these things, even if you're going to get some more snow. And a lot of people don't realize that. Partial list of some of the plants that you can plant at that flux time, or even like it is now where we're past that and we're into spring, but it's really early spring and we might get 1 or 2 more snows. You can plant things like, you can plant beets, you can plant radishes, you can plant lettuces, kale. I think you could probably get away with planting carrots. You can plant turnips. You can plant Swiss chard, beets, radishes, Swiss chard, kale, lettuce, peas, things like that. You can plant all of these things at this time of year, and they'll do just fine. In fact, a lot of them need to have the cold nights in order to help them germinate. So that might be something you want to get on now before it gets too warm and they actually, you've got too many other things to do, and maybe some of these things won't even perform as well for you. So those are some things that you can get started. And of course, going through your property and cleaning up any garbage that has blown in over the winter, any tools that you left behind right before the snow flew and it got buried. You can go through and you can collect all these things. And if it's really early in the season and the trees, bushes, and shrubs have not yet started to bloom, to produce their little buds, that's a good time to prune things. But once they've produced their buds, that means they're growing. They need that energy to grow. And if you would now prune them or cut them back, you're actually causing them stress. And their energy should be going to growing as opposed to dealing with the injury that you caused them by pruning them. So it's not ideal once they've formed those buds to prune them at that time. But you may not have that going on yet. Things may not have formed their buds yet, and things might not be growing yet. They might still be dormant. If that's the case, it's an ideal time to go and prune them up. And so there are a lot of things that you can really be doing at this time of year. In fact, you can also be preparing your beds to go to plant things in, your annuals and your vegetables and things like that. And it's the ideal time to do that because you want to. I hope that you guys can't see what I'm seeing. I'm seeing a thing says I'm getting a phone call. There. I'm not seeing it anymore. I hope you guys didn't see that. But anyway, you can prepare your ground. You can prepare your soil in as long as it can be worked. You can start adding soil to, say, raised beds to get that height up where it needs to be. You can start turning your mulch over into your soil if you choose to do that. These things are all things you can be doing at this time of year, and they're things that I've started to do as well. I've got my first bed planted already, and in it I have, let me think what I planted in there. It's in one of my raised beds. I planted Swiss chard, beets, radishes, kale, Swiss chard, turnips. And those can all be planted at this time of year with no problem. Now, something else that I don't worry about planting, or won't from now on worry about planting at this time of the year, is, that was my dad going by through in the alley behind me, potatoes. And anybody else will tell you not to do that, so it's up to you whether you want to or not. But I know that last year I threw some potatoes in the soil just because I had some potatoes that had grown eyes, and I thought, well, it's not going to hurt, I can't use them for cooking because they were too far gone for that. And I thought, well, I'm just going to throw them into one of my raised beds and see what happens. And yeah, what grew up above the soil when I got a frost, if I didn't cover it, it died off. But I ended up getting a crop of potatoes out of there. So I have some seed potatoes in the house that I didn't have the room indoors to plant. I did grow some potatoes indoors in potato grow bags, but I didn't have room for all of my seed potatoes. And so I still have some. And if I get an opportunity, I'm going to plant those outside as well. But before that happens, I have a lot of other things that can be planted at this time. So I'm going to plant those first, and hopefully quickly, because I don't want the seed potatoes to go to waste. If it looks like they're going to go bad on me, I'll just put them ahead of other things and plant them. But those are things you can be doing at this time of year, and it's really kind of nice to know that you don't have to wait till it gets hot. You don't have to wait until all risk of snow is gone before you can get out there. Go on, get out. There are things you can do in every season. So go out and play, enjoy yourself. And in the meantime, I'm going to get going and get back to work, because the sun's getting low in the sky, and I want to get a few more things done before it gets too dark. And obviously I have a little bit of time before that happens. You can see the sun shining right in my eyes, but I'm going to go plant some things. So, all right, I will catch you again soon, and I hope that you enjoyed this video. And if you have anything that you want to talk about, anything that I didn't mention that people can do when the weather's doing what the weather's doing here, and you'd like to put that in the comments section, some advice for things people can do around their property outdoors to get them out and about, that they can do and it'll be productive and enjoyable for them, go ahead and put it in the comment section. I'd like to see it. Maybe it's something I haven't thought of, and it's something I'd like to do. So I'll like reading it, and I imagine so will everybody else. Hey, thanks again. Bye-bye.